consumption really is what you care about. So when people say, hey, Mr. Gates, you should feel guilty because you have so much money, well, it's not that I have money, it's my consumption I should, if I'm supposed to feel guilty, it's my consumption. The part that is going to philanthropy really is, in a sense, in the pocketbooks of the poorest, assuming that we're smart about getting it to benefit them.
Well, between cashing checks from consumers who actually believe their latest Microsoft operating system has all the bugs worked out and is completely safe from hacking, Bill Gates has taken another shot at capitalism, claiming it cannot fix income equality on its own and only government can break the sinister cycle. Let us dig into Bill's assertions as we welcome back to MidPoint veteran economist and chairman of the Society to Advance Financial Education, Steve Beaman joins us. Steve, always a pleasure to see you.
Well, thanks for having me on once again. It's great to be on with you as always.
So here we go for Bill Gates. This was a book written by a French economist talking about income equality, and Gates published, or actually reviewed the book on his own blog on Monday. He said high levels of income inequality are bad. Capitalism cannot fix inequality on its own, and government action can help break the vicious cycle in which inequality begets more severe inequality. All right, Steve, now to you. Break that all down into English for us. How do you get it?
Well, let me start off with the incredible hypocrisy of the wealthiest man in the world coming out claiming that income inequality is high on his agenda. But if you read his review thoroughly, he excluded himself, saying that entrepreneurs who build their own wealth should be excluded from that calculation. So I think we have to look at his commentary as one he's trying to build his own image. The big issue here, Ed, and you and I know this, is that the income inequality issue is very real. We have seen over the last 10 years the inequality in this nation grow to preposterous proportion, frankly, higher than it's been since about 1927. A lot of that can be attributed to the explosion growth in the stock market. That has built the wealth of shareholders, many of whom are in the top 10%. And so that's what's creating this income disparity. Now, clearly, if the market, breaks off and comes down precipitously, that will help the income inequality equation, but in the wrong direction.
So let's talk about the billionaire side of all this, because I think that really comes into play, because here you not only have Bill Gates, who's excoriating capitalism. Warren Buffett has just gone after the super rich for failing to pay their taxes. George Soros has argued that the market system is falling apart. Where are the billionaires coming from here, and what gives them the proper economic standing, if you will, to be able to make these sort of assertions?
Well, you'll forgive my cynicism when it comes especially to Warren Buffett and George Soros. They may come out as a populist argument for this type of thing, when in reality, they're supporting the governments that benefit their businesses. I can assure you, if investors dig deep enough, they're going to find Mr. Buffett profited handsomely, for example, from the failure of the Keystone Pipeline to come through. He just happens to own the railroads that ship the goods that the pipeline can't. So I think there's a lot of positioning by these massively wealthy investors to have governments support their investment activities, but they use a populist approach to cover it and try to sound like one of the regular people, when you and I both know that's not regular people.
So let's dig down a little bit into the whole idea here about capitalism and income equality. You're right, there is an income equality here. But if other economists, let's just go ahead and call those economists who are not worth billions and billions of dollars and never have to worry about where the next paycheck is coming from, like you and me, if we look into this at that point, what's the reality then of income equality and making capitalism work to not maybe solve it, but at least make it better?
Well, in the Master of Money show, which I do every week, we actually spoke about capitalism versus socialism just last week. And one of the points I tried to make to folks is that there are no really capitalistic countries outside of Hong Kong and Singapore and Switzerland. The United States certainly is not an exemplary capitalistic economy. We have government woven throughout our economy. And I would make the argument that in many cases, it's that government intervention that creates the disparity. When they create regulations that force small businesses out of business, when they create regulations that force labor offshore, when they create regulations that really do hamper the entrepreneurial spirit, that hurts the small guy. It doesn't hurt Goldman Sachs. And the best example of this is the recently released Dodd-Frank legislation that, while it was intended well, it's really caused small banks to go out of business.
Let's also point out that Bill Gates' net worth, $50 billion in 1998. Now it's closer to $80 billion. So what is it that allows these billionaires to be able to, as Gates has done, call for higher taxes? Wait a minute, let's stop there. He wants higher taxes to combat inequality. Is that really something? And again, we're talking about just basic knowledge here. I've never seen any economist that I've talked to that said that's the great panacea here, that solves anything.
Well, from a realistic, purely economic perspective, throwing out the political agendas, raising taxes on the very few billionaires wouldn't do a thing. It may feel good, it may look good to the public, but it doesn't do anything. If we really want to reduce income inequality, we have to have policies that promote the middle class. And right now, we've not seen that out of the government in a number of years.
What would be those policies then, Steve? A couple of them.
I think we need to have a flatter tax so that we get more participation. Let's remember that 90% of the taxes are already paid by the top 50% of the people. We have a very progressive tax code in this country, and I think we need to broaden that out as we've done in the past. Secondly, I think we need to rein in the regulation from some of the different bureaucracies. The EPA comes to mind specifically, and some of its impact on regulating small business out of business.
Steve, why is it, though, that some people can't see what you just said? Two very logical ideas, yet we continually hear people say, raise taxes, raise taxes, raise taxes, instead of the flat tax. Why are we still stuck in this ridiculous cycle?
Well, again, let's look at half the population paying virtually no income taxes. They have no interest in paying out of their pocket. And it does become a very easy whipping post to say it's the rich. Now, if we look back over the last 200 years, we certainly had the oligarchs of the late 1800s and early 1900s that had monopolies that did get busted up. And we saw that was a flaw. So we corrected for it. But right now, a lot of times we see the correction is worse than the pain that we suffer. And so we need to be extraordinarily careful. We don't let that emotional knee-jerk reaction create policy that hurt in the long run.
20 seconds. All we need is more government, right, Steve?
I think we need to be honest about which problems government has solved. If we look and say, well, they've done Medicare and they've done Social Security, I salute those efforts with the exception of the fact we've put that bill onto our children and grandchildren. We didn't really solve the problem. We just delayed the payment for it.
Thank you.
So I think we need to be careful whenever we look at government to solve these for us.
And I had to say that tongue-in-cheek. It is stuck right now, as a matter of fact, so deep in there. The Society to Advance Financial Education, Steve Beaman, thanks so much for joining us, sir. We'll look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you. It's always my pleasure.
All right, later on this hour, proof once again that not everything said on the Sunday news programs is supremely intelligent or chock full of wisdom. And after the break, the government of Turkey might finally be getting a dash of their own smarts in the war against ISIS. Former CIA intelligence officer Lisa Ruth